Patterns for multiplying positives and negatives advanced. We looked at what happens when we multiply two numbers together. They can end up being positive or negative for their answer. We also looked at what happens when we multiply four numbers together, and we have different patterns of positives and negatives. We're going to make some observations. In the first problem, negative 2 times positive 5 times negative 3 times negative 1, we had three negatives. We ended up with a negative answer. In the bottom one, 3 times negative 2 times negative 1 times 4, we had two negatives, and we ended up with positive. In the next page, the first problem, we have six numbers, and we have four negatives. We ended up with a positive. So when we have two negatives or four negatives, we have a positive answer. When we had one negative or three negatives, we have a negative answer. Can you see what the pattern is? Take a look at this next problem. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. With 5 negatives, will the problem be positive or negative? Pause your video and take a guess. You got a 50-50. If you said the answer is going to be negative, you're correct. Negative times negative makes a positive. Times a negative. Positive times negative is negative. Negative times positive is negative. Negative times negative is positive. Negative times positive is negative. We get a negative answer with 5 negatives. So it turns out we have two rules. If I have an even number of negatives, even, what are evens? Evens are 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, anything that ends in one of those numbers. 22 is even, it ends in 2. 30 is even, it ends in 0. An even number of negatives, the answer is, when we had no negatives, we got a positive. 2, we got a positive. 4, we got a positive. So the even number of negatives, the answer is positive. We get positive numbers. But if we have an odd number of negatives, what are odds? Odds are 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, anything that ends in one of those numbers. 1 is odd. 11 is odd. 27 is odd because the last digit is 7. An odd number of negatives, the answer is negative. But it's important to remember this is when multiplying. So let's clarify. An even number of negatives, when you're multiplying together, your answer is going to be positive. An odd number of negatives, your answer is negative when multiplying. Remember, addition and subtraction, you have to look at how long your arrow is. Does any of your zero pairs cancel out? And which arrow do you have the longest left? Multiplying, we get to count. So let's test some of this. Will the answer be positive or negative? How many negatives? 1, 2, 3. Is 3 even or odd? 3 is odd. So when you're multiplying, the answer is negative. This answer will be negative. I don't care about what the answer is, just that it's negative for right now. Look at number 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 negatives. 4 is an even number, so when all we're doing is multiplying, the answer is going to be what? Positive. Let's test a few more quickly. I have negative 2n. This is a hidden way of doing multiplication. If I put that negative 3 in, I would have a negative times a negative, which is positive. Let's try our next one. I have negative 3. This is a hidden way of saying negative 3 times x times y. If I say x is negative and I say y is negative, then I have 3 negatives. 3 is odd. So my answer is negative. Let's look at the last one. I have 5, which is positive, times a times b. If I tell you a is a negative number and b is a negative number, and we know that 5 is positive, we're multiplying. We have 2 negatives. 2 is even, so the answer would be positive.